Welcome back to our channel, your premier destination for the most comprehensive and thrilling deep dives into the dramatic, ever-evolving world of Genoa City. Today is a remarkably intense day to explore the complex web of dark secrets, devastating betrayals, and shocking, unprecedented alliances that continuously define our favorite families. We have a monumental, earth-shattering storyline to unpack right now, one that carries the terrifying potential to permanently dismantle the very foundation of the legendary Newman dynasty. Settle in, get comfortable, and prepare yourselves as we meticulously unravel the horrifying truths hidden just beneath the glamorous surface of this iconic city. The atmosphere currently blanketing Genoa City is incredibly thick, with an unspoken, suffocating dread, a palpable tension that seems to closely follow Mariah Copeland as she finally makes her highly anticipated, yet deeply mysterious return to the canvas. On the absolute surface, her sudden arrival is marked by a serene, almost unsettlingly calm smile, projecting an image of total psychological stability and emotional grounding to everyone she encounters in her daily routines. However, this carefully constructed, flawless facade immediately triggers massive, deafening alarm bells for Sharon Rosales. A mother's intuition is a fiercely powerful, undeniable force of nature, and Sharon instantly detects the subtle, microscopic, yet terrifying cracks in her daughter's fiercely composed exterior. Every single time a mobile phone vibrates against a table or a digital notification chimes in the quiet room, a violent, involuntary flinch completely betrays Mariah's feigned, peaceful tranquility. Sharon watches from a distance, her maternal anxiety mounting exponentially by the second, as Mariah obsessively guards her personal device, frantically and secretly deleting incoming text messages from an untraceable, unknown number. The sheer, unadulterated desperation evident in Mariah's swift, hidden finger movements heavily suggests that she is not merely avoiding a persistent nuisance, but actively, desperately concealing a catastrophic, looming threat that has stealthily followed her back to the safety of her home. This highly erratic, deeply suspicious behavior immediately sends Sharon into a terrifying spiral of agonizing psychological distress and historical paranoia. She has spent the better part of her adult life fiercely protecting her beloved children from the relentless, consuming darkness that so often threatens to swallow the residents of their city, and the chilling sight of her eldest daughter operating in such a clandestine, profoundly fearful manner resurrects every single past trauma she has ever endured. Sharon knows all too well the devastating generational consequences of dark secrets kept hidden in the shadows, especially those complex mysteries involving the formidable Newman family or the deeply disturbed, dangerous individuals who constantly orbit their immense wealth and power. The heavy, suffocating silence that now exists between mother and daughter quickly becomes a volatile battlefield of unasked, terrifying questions and deliberately deflected, nervous glances. Sharon meticulously analyzes every minute shift in Mariah's defensive posture, every prolonged, vacant gaze out the coffeehouse window, realizing with a horrifying, undeniable certainty that Mariah's physical return to the city limits does not mean she has truly come back to a place of safety. Instead, it appears increasingly obvious that she has brought a lethal danger right to their vulnerable doorstep, carrying a psychological burden far too immense for any one person to bear alone. The chilling, complex reality of Mariah's missing time away from Genoa City is far more sinister and deeply convoluted than anyone in her immediate family could possibly begin to imagine. During the harrowing, undocumented period of her sudden disappearance, she was not merely lost or seeking a temporary escape, she was systematically, methodically drawn into the toxic, highly manipulative, and inescapable web of the notorious Matt Clark. Matt, a dangerous man whose very name evokes a visceral, sickening reaction of terror and profound disgust among the city's elite residents, has spent his recent, secretive days orchestrating an absolute masterclass in psychological warfare and emotional manipulation. He did not simply hold Mariah captive in the traditional, physical sense of the word. Instead, he captivated her vulnerable mind, slowly feeding her a carefully curated, highly believable narrative specifically designed to exploit her inherent, unwavering sense of justice and her deep-seated, historical skepticism of the powerful, often ruthless Newman patriarch. Matt brilliantly recognized that Mariah's unique, complicated position deeply connected to the Newmans through her mother and Nick, Yet historically remaining an independent outsider made her the absolute perfect, unsuspecting Trojan horse for his ultimate, destructive vendetta against Victor Newman. Rather than taking his alleged, highly explosive evidence directly to the local authorities, a conventional move that would undoubtedly trigger an immediate deployment of highly paid, ruthless Newman corporate lawyers, and a swift, quiet, permanent burial of the inconvenient facts, Matt chose a far more insidious, calculated route. He clearly recognized that the true, lasting destruction of the impenetrable Newman empire requires a devastating inside job, a slow, agonizing, and public demolition of familial trust executed from within the highest family ranks. By strategically weaponizing Mariah's strong moral compass, Matt aims to entirely bypass the impenetrable, state-of-the-art fortress of Victor's corporate security apparatus and strike a lethal blow directly at the emotional, vulnerable core of the family. He masterfully positioned himself in Mariah's eyes not as a traditional self-serving villain, but as a tragically misunderstood, noble whistleblower, manipulating her into firmly believing that she is the absolute only person possessing the courage and capability to expose a truly monstrous, unforgivable injustice. This highly calculated, emotional manipulation effectively transformed Mariah from a helpless victim of a terrifying kidnapping into a reluctant, deeply conflicted, yet determined accomplice in a dark plot that possesses the power to completely rewrite the entire, storied history of the Newman family. The absolute cornerstone of Matt's brilliant psychological manipulation relies entirely on a single, devastating, and irrefutable piece of digital evidence, a highly classified, encrypted audio recording that he securely entrusted to Mariah's possession. The specific contents of this digital file are nothing short of explosive, containing a clandestine conversation that completely defies all logical reasoning and foundational familial loyalty. When Mariah first nervously listened to the crisp audio playback, the blood entirely drained from her face as she instantly recognized the unmistakable, commanding, and deeply intimidating baritone voice that sounded exactly, without a shadow of a doubt, like Victor Newman. The voice captured on the secret recording was chillingly cold, highly calculating, and entirely devoid of any recognizable paternal affection, issuing a direct, unequivocal, and highly illegal order to a mysterious, unnamed, and compliant operative. The specific directive was terrifyingly clear, commanding the shadow operative to covertly infiltrate the highly secure, heavily guarded digital database of the exclusive rehabilitation center and systematically, deliberately alter the highly sensitive, confidential medical and psychological records of his own struggling son, Nick Newman. The horrifying implications of this clandestine, digital recording stretch far beyond the traditional realms of mere corporate espionage or standard digital manipulation. They point directly to a horrific, premeditated, and incredibly cruel chemical assault on a highly vulnerable man desperately seeking professional recovery. The audio heavily suggests a massive, coordinated effort to not only falsify Nick's daily progress reports, but to actively, intentionally sabotage his fragile sobriety by deliberately introducing highly addictive, synthetic narcotics into his strictly monitored, daily medication regimen. As the horrifying, suffocating reality of the recording washed over her trembling form, Mariah was violently forced to confront a truly monstrous, unthinkable possibility. The widely accepted narrative that Nick had simply, tragically, succumbed to his inner demons, experiencing a natural, albeit devastating relapse born of inherent weakness and unresolved trauma, was an entirely fabricated, malicious lie. Instead, the evidence strongly suggested he was the tragic victim of a ruthless, orchestrated poisoning, a deliberate, calculated destabilization of his fragile mind and body, allegedly ordered by the very patriarch who publicly claims to protect the Newman family above all else. This earth-shattering, paradigm-shifting revelation fundamentally and permanently altered Mariah's entire perception of the complex Newman family dynamic. Her initial, highly justified skepticism regarding Matt Clark's true, underlying motives was heavily, entirely overshadowed by the sheer, undeniable gravity of the digital evidence resting heavily in her trembling hands. She found herself completely trapped in an agonizing, paralyzing moral dilemma, violently torn between her absolute, visceral disgust for Matt's historical crimes and the terrifying, unavoidable realization that he might actually, for once, be telling the absolute truth about Victor's unimaginable cruelty. The heartbreaking thought of Nick, a genuinely good man who has consistently shown her profound kindness and served as an unwavering pillar of strength for her mother, suffering entirely alone in the dangerous streets, driven completely mad by synthetic chemicals he never consciously chose to ingest, ignited a fierce, protective, and unquenchable fury deep within her soul. Mariah realized, with terrifying clarity, that if Victor was truly capable of ruthlessly sacrificing his own son's sanity for some twisted, Machiavellian corporate endgame, then the entire, extended family was in unprecedented, lethal danger, and she alone held the only definitive key to exposing the true architect of their impending destruction. Meanwhile, the tragic, incredibly dangerous consequences of this alleged, highly coordinated sabotage are playing out in horrifying real time across the darkest, most unforgiving, and dangerous corners of Genoa City. Nick Newman, entirely, tragically unaware that his devastating, highly public relapse may have been chemically, intentionally engineered by a malicious outside force, is currently trapped in a harrowing, inescapable downward spiral of addiction and despair. Stripped entirely of his usual, formidable resilience, and completely overwhelmed by a terrifying, chemically induced psychosis, he wanders the cold, unforgiving neon-lit streets, a mere, hollow shadow of the strong, protective man he once was. The dangerous, synthetic narcotics secretly introduced into his vulnerable system have completely, violently hijacked his neurological pathways, artificially amplifying his deepest, most painful traumas, and heavily isolating him from the very family members who desperately wish to pull him back from the absolute brink of death. Every single, frantic attempt by his desperate family to locate his whereabouts ends in frustrating failure, as the artificially spiked, highly potent drugs continuously compel him to remain hidden in the dangerous shadows, entirely consumed by a manufactured, chemical madness that threatens to end his life at any given moment. The sheer, undeniable severity of Nick's rapid, terrifying deterioration has forced an unprecedented, seismic, and truly historic shift within the usually fractured, highly competitive Newman family hierarchy. In a stunning, completely unexpected display of fierce familial solidarity, Victoria and Adam Newman have made the shocking, monumental decision to completely abandon their bitter, highly destructive, decades-long sibling rivalry. The historical, deep-seated animosity, the endless, vicious corporate backstabbing, and the profound, deeply rooted jealousy that usually define every single aspect of their toxic relationship have been entirely, remarkably suspended in the terrifying face of their older brother's imminent, highly probable demise. Recognizing with cold clarity that their powerful father's vast resources are strangely, suspiciously ineffective, or perhaps even deliberately sluggish, in tracking Nick down, the two highly intelligent siblings have forged a highly secretive, incredibly dangerous, and unprecedented investigative alliance. They fundamentally understand that Nick's ultimate survival depends entirely on their unique ability to pool their formidable, analytical intellects and vast underground networks, operating completely, silently under the highly sensitive radar of Victor's omnipresent, suffocating surveillance apparatus. Driven by a shared, desperate, and urgent need for concrete answers, Victoria and Adam launch a relentless, highly clandestine, and incredibly thorough digital investigation into the exclusive rehabilitation center where Nick's absolute worst nightmare initially began. Utilizing Adam's extensive, highly questionable connections in the digital underworld and Victoria's unparalleled, intimidating corporate authority, they successfully managed to bypass the facility's incredibly robust, state-of-the-art security protocols. Their meticulous, agonizing review of the center's massive digital footprint reveals a chilling, undeniable anomaly that completely, terrifyingly validates their absolute darkest, most paranoid suspicions. They discover, to their absolute horror, that the primary, high-definition security footage covering the exact, specific corridor leading directly to Nick's private, isolated room was entirely, deliberately wiped clean on the very night he suffered his catastrophic, highly publicized psychological break. This was clearly not a simple, innocent technical glitch or a random, unfortunate server failure. It was a highly sophisticated, meticulously targeted deletion of a specific critical timeline, executed with chilling military precision to permanently conceal a devastating, highly illegal crime. Refusing to be deterred or defeated by the erased primary footage, Adam and Victoria dig significantly deeper, utilizing highly advanced, incredibly expensive digital recovery software to quietly access a secondary, heavily encrypted, and largely forgotten backup server that the original infiltrator carelessly overlooked. Hours of agonizing, incredibly tedious, frame-by-frame visual analysis finally yield a massive, game-changing breakthrough that sends shivers down their spines. In the highly distorted, incredibly grainy, and dark footage captured just mere moments before the primary system was intentionally wiped, they identify a solitary, suspicious figure quickly slipping out of the deep shadows of the facility's hallway. Through advanced, highly accurate facial recognition software and extensive cross-referencing with known international criminal databases, Adam makes a horrifying, undeniable identification. The last person clearly seen lurking dangerously near Nick's room, the individual undoubtedly responsible for physically tampering with the highly controlled medication, is a known, ruthless, and highly efficient operative currently sitting directly on the massive payroll of Matt Clark. This undeniable, concrete digital connection links the tragedy of Nick's relapse directly to the notorious criminal mastermind, instantly elevating the situation from a deeply personal family tragedy to a highly coordinated, incredibly lethal corporate conspiracy. As Victoria and Adam frantically race against the ticking clock to piece together the full, terrifying extent of Matt Clark's deep involvement, the separate, highly volatile threads of this massive, city-wide conspiracy are rapidly, dangerously converging on the complete opposite side of town. Sharon, driven to the absolute brink of physical and emotional exhaustion by her relentless, suffocating maternal anxiety, has finally taken matters entirely into her own capable hands. Unable to endure another single moment of Mariah's continued, highly suspicious evasiveness, she begins to secretly, meticulously track her daughter's erratic movements through the winding, busy streets of the city. Her desperate, highly focused pursuit eventually leads her to a desolate, incredibly dimly lit, and highly isolated corner of a local, sprawling park, a place completely, eerily devoid of the city's usual bustling, vibrant energy. There, hidden carefully behind the thick, overgrown foliage, Sharon's absolute worst, most paralyzing, and deeply buried fears are abruptly, violently realized in front of her very eyes. She witnesses her beloved daughter, Mariah, standing remarkably close, face to face in a hushed, incredibly intense conversation with the very architect of their family's worst historical nightmares, Matt Clark. The deeply shocking sight of her daughter willingly engaging with a man widely known for his unparalleled cruelty and psychological manipulation sends a massive, paralyzing shockwave of pure, unadulterated terror through Sharon's entire trembling being. Propelled instantly by a fierce, primal, and completely unstoppable maternal instinct to protect her young, Sharon completely abandons all sense of logical caution and aggressively bursts from her concealed hiding place, instantly shattering the quiet, clandestine nature of the secret meeting. The heavy atmosphere instantly crackles with highly explosive, dangerous tension as she aggressively places herself squarely, protectively between Mariah and Matt, her wide eyes blazing with a potent, terrifying mixture of absolute, unyielding fury and profound, deep-seated terror. Without a single moment's hesitation, or a shred of fear for her own safety, she issues a desperate, incredibly commanding, and non-negotiable ultimatum, firmly demanding that her daughter immediately, permanently sever all existing ties and physically walk away from the highly dangerous, manipulative criminal standing casually before them. Sharon's heart pounds violently against her ribs as she attempts to physically, forcefully pull Mariah away from the scene, fully, completely prepared to sacrifice her own physical safety to permanently break the hypnotic, incredibly toxic psychological hold she firmly believes Matt has successfully established over her vulnerable child. The crisp evening air is incredibly thick, with the distinct metallic scent of impending violence. The heavy silence between the three tense figures, heavily burdened with the immense weight of years of unresolved trauma and deep, historical hatred. However, the ultimate, highly anticipated climax of this terrifying, deeply emotional confrontation does not arrive in the expected form of a violent, physical altercation, but rather through a chilling, highly calculated psychological blow delivered directly by Mariah herself. Completely refusing to yield to her mother's frantic, highly emotional physical demands, Mariah firmly stands her ground, her previously calm expression rapidly hardening into an impenetrable mask of grim, absolute determination. She firmly, resolutely counters Sharon's desperate, tearful warnings by slowly revealing the true, terrifying nature of her seemingly unholy, highly controversial alliance. Mariah makes it terrifyingly, abundantly clear that her current, shocking association with Matt is absolutely not a tragic product of coercion, kidnapping, or blind manipulation, but rather a highly calculated, incredibly deliberate choice, driven entirely by a truth far too massive and destructive to ever ignore. She insinuates, with devastating, chilling clarity and an unwavering gaze, that if Sharon were to become fully aware of the catastrophic, world-shattering, and deeply hidden secret Matt currently holds regarding Victor Newman's truly unforgivable, monstrous actions, the desperate, frantic maternal demands for her to walk away would instantly, permanently cease. This cryptic, incredibly horrifying justification hangs heavily in the cold, unforgiving night air, leaving Sharon completely, utterly paralyzed by the terrifying realization that the entire, majestic foundation of the Newman family is built on a monstrous, sickening lie, and that the ultimate, unstoppable destruction of their legendary legacy has already been firmly set into motion, with her own deeply conflicted daughter holding the final, devastating match.